we talked about, all right, well, what else do we need to see from the Lions for us to like either feel better or kind of have more questions answered? And we kind of got it in a way, right? Where you have a game where just the whole entire dam of interceptions breaks and you just have to deal with all of that really the entire game. Do you look at that positively in that they were able to deal with that? Or is it like, oh man, like this is in the range of outcomes and other teams are going to be able to make us pay for this?
Yeah, so I think it goes both ways. Like we talked about on the show before, like Goff has a couple of those games every year. Like even going back to his Rams days, that's just like the type of quarterback he is. Where when he's kept clean, when the play calling is good, like he is going to deliver an efficient offense. But there's some games where he'll be pressured more often than usual, and like last night, he'll throw interceptions, he'll throw balls into the ground. Like that's just that's kind of just like his makeup and his build as a quarterback who doesn't scramble or doesn't move out of the pocket that often. And we saw a little bit of that regression under pressure in this game back to his career average instead of what he was doing this season. But the optimistic view is what you mentioned, where the Lions are able to win a game in which that Goff threw 5 interceptions. Their run defense played phenomenal. You have Ali McNeil, DJ Reader leading the charge there. You have Brian Branch in the secondary, who has put himself firmly into the defensive player of the year conversation. And so, you were right about what this Lions defense could become. And we really saw that in that game against the Texans, where they were really able to slow down Houston's offense in the second half, despite being put in some pretty tough situations.
You hope that Zadarius Smith coming in there is a nice addition from a production perspective, from a pressure perspective. And I mean, speaking of run defenses, like the Texans did a really, really good job in their run defense. And I like that you mentioned that, hey, you regressed a little bit more to maybe your career mean as opposed to how well Goff has been playing under pressure this season. I don't know if you agree with this, but thinking about like the Vikings game with Sam Darnold, where you get a bunch of interceptions there, it feels like you're going to have quarterbacks, especially when you're a play action. We want to throw the ball down the field in that those are, I think, maybe I might be wrong in how I'm looking at them, but they're a little bit high variance in that they have like a really, really wide tail when you hit that big play for a touchdown. But then that can also end up in an interception. So I don't know, Tage, am I just doing the like what happened in the game I love? Like I guess I'm okay with it. Like you're gonna just have games where you have no, like crazy interception totals because people want to throw the ball down the field, and like that's kind of I guess it's exciting to me where you look at it and it's like, okay, well, the Lions are the best team in the NFC, but they have this huge thing that might kind of show up every once in a while that to me makes it almost more fun, whether it's like, how is a defense going to manufacture that matchup in a few different ways, where now maybe we look at the Lions offensive line and say, hey, you can beat these guys. Like you are able to take it to them and really flip a game in that way.
That is a really good point to bring up with the interceptions, where this was always something that I mentioned with Jameis when people would reference his high interception numbers of like he was throwing his interceptions in low expected point situations. So these were situations where it was third and long, or they were backed up and they were basically arm punts more often than not. And we saw that from Josh Allen last year too, where a lot of his interceptions required context. Like they were drops that hit off the receiver's hand that bounced in the defender's hand. They were some version of arm punts on third and long, or when they were backed up in their own territory. And I think we're starting to see that with some of these other quarterbacks here, where Goff was trying to force the ball downfield to hit a Jameson Williams deep shot, which is a massive explosive for the Lions when it actually works. And when it wasn't working yesterday, it just led to interceptions that ended up flipping the field a couple times. And you had the one where the defender landed at the 1 yard line, and that was like a huge advantage for the Lions defense on that next possession. And Darnold was kind of the opposite of that, where he was just trying to get the ball into the end zone in the red zone, and those were like high expected point turnovers. So like those are the ones that you don't want to see. I'm more okay with the interceptions as long as they're kind of in the lower expected point situations.
Yeah, like you mentioned, of course, the red zone interception is going to be different. And I like that you mentioned it requires context. Hey, feels like that's kind of the tagline for our entire podcast. Everything requires context. I feel like we do all this advocating for, yeah, like simplify things for your quarterback, run play action, throw the ball down the field. And now we just have like the Killian Murphy Oppenheimer meme. We're like, oh no, like we keep on pushing for this. These are the results. Like this is what we kind of asked for in a way where these things are going to happen again. I still think it's fun. All right, Chase, let's move on to the top of the NFC East here, where, of course, you have the Eagles now in first place over the Commanders. and they are going to be playing each other on Thursday night. I'm really, really excited for that game. Just looking at this schedules the rest of the way. First, the Eagles, who have really beaten up on some teams recently. Defense is playing awesome. They have the Commanders, then they have the Rams, then they have the Ravens, Panthers, then the Steelers, Commanders again. So they have a lot of good teams coming up. Whereas the Commanders, they of course have the Eagles twice, but then you play teams like the Titans, the Saints, the Cowboys. They do play the Falcons later on, but it feels like overall the Eagles have the much tougher schedule, a little bit of annoying travel in different spots, and this game is for the top spot. Like that's another thing where it feels super exciting because we watch the Eagles defense play really, really well in these games. When I watch the film, it takes it so fun. Like they are really, really fundamentally sound. They're executing everything they need to be executing within Vic Fangio's defense. And then the question moves to, can you do it against a really good offense? And we're going to be able to get one part of that answer on Thursday night in Philadelphia. Of course, the Commanders, as we talked about, come off that loss against the Steelers. I'm not sure if you have any concern overall for the Commanders or where your head is at sort of generally here.
Yeah, I'm not super concerned about the Commanders' offense. I think that they just ran into a really good pass defense in Pittsburgh, and I think the thing that we're learning about like Washington's offense as a whole is like they are going to do really well against defenses that aren't like top five, top 10. They'll have some struggles against like some of the top defenses. Like they have fine receiving options outside of McLaurin, but nothing special. Offensive line is good, but not like elite, like not something that you can rely on for large parts of the game. And so they kind of will probably settle in that top 10, but maybe not top like two or top three like we saw in the first half of the season. They ran the ball really well against Pittsburgh. It was just the pass game that struggled for them. So yeah, like I think like going forward, we'll just continue to learn about the team where there were so many moving parts with new quarterback, new play caller, kind of overturning the pass catching room, overturning the offensive line room. And so just like there's just like we just need more information on the Commanders offense to fully figure out where they'll slot in. But I do think that we know that they're a good offense. We'll just kind of have to see like, are they elite? Like can they really do well against good defenses, or are they going to kind of struggle against those defenses but beat up on everyone else?
Need more information feels like another good tagline where we already had it. Wait, what was the context one? Tej, it needs context and then need more information. We need a lot of things here. I agree. In that way, I thought that in this game, I mean, not even Commanders thing, but Patrick Queen, who I felt like had struggled at points this year, like he was awesome in this game. So I'm really, really happy to see that. Again, not a Commanders point. I thought that the Steelers defensive line kind of like I don't know, like crunch the pocket, but they were able to like Jane Daniels didn't have a lot of scrambles. So I'm interested to see if the Eagles are going to be able to find a way to sort of do that as well. For the Commanders defense, obviously you're hoping that Marshawn Lattimore is able to come in there healthy. And it seems like Mike Sandersville is going to be fine on the outside where there was a really nice snap of him just kind of blowing up a run block. So that could be exciting for the Commanders going forward. I want to move over here to the Eagles here, where of course they take care of Dallas after starting slow out the gate. I mean, the defense, like the run of, like I said, Washington, Los Angeles, Baltimore, it's going to probably define the season. I feel like I'm a little bit nervous for it from an Eagles defense perspective, just thinking about some of the quarterbacks that can extend the play. There were a few examples in the game against the Bengals where, again, the Eagles like really ended up winning that game really, really in a strong way. But some of the examples where Burrow's moving outside the pocket, you have a little bit of difficulty in your coverage, just kind of moving things. But then when I think about the Commanders, like, hey, they're, filtered through one receiver. Are you going to be able to just cloud that side and kind of play tight away from it? That's going to be just a really, really fun matchup where unfortunately we're not going to be able to get to preview this game just because it's played on Thursday night. But I want to lean towards the Eagles just the rest of the way, but the schedule is really, I think, pushing me away from thinking like, hey, this is like absolutely like they're going to win the NFC East.
Yeah, I do see that, but I do lean Eagles just kind of in general, and like even with the schedule because just like I mean offense like it always starts a little bit slow for them, but like they still are a top 10 offense in terms of efficiency this year. And then like the defense has like really gotten to that point that we talked about a couple of weeks ago where they were ranked really highly in success rate, but not in EPA because they weren't generating turnovers. Right now, they rank sixth in EPA per play allowed and first in success rate allowed. So Vic Fangio has done a great job with that defense, which I know that you're really excited about. But like the players have just really stepped up in terms of coverage, where you have Kenyon Mitchell, who has been one of the better corners in the league this year. He's allowing less than 1 yard per coverage snap. And when he's been targeted 44 times this year, and he's only allowed 23 receptions, which is almost a 50% reception rate, and has done a good job tackling even when letting those receptions. Cooper DeJean has stepped in and done a pretty good job in coverage after returning from his injury. And then the linebacker play between Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean has been pretty high level as well. So there's just like these players on the Eagles defense are all playing pretty well. Obviously, you have the pass rush led by Jalen Carter and Josh Sweat, but I don't know if we fully realize how good this back seven could be in terms of coverage at this point in the season, with how hard it is to learn a Fangio defense and how many moving parts there were in the defense.
Zach Bond is an all-pro linebacker. Like, that is so wild when I think about, like, he is literally playing out of position. Like, he has not played this position in the league before. Fangio is like linebackers first and foremost. That's a position that he spent the most time with. For him to just be like, oh yeah, like we can do this. Like, that's so sick for to see how it has been. And I will say, Tej, like if they have 3 really strong showings, or even like 2 out of 3 over the next few weeks, I'm gonna say some irresponsible things about this defense. Like they do need like or I would love for them to have a dominant edge rusher. They just do not have that right now. If they had like 1.5 or even like 0.75 edge rushers, like I said, there are irresponsible things that could be said about this defense. We're going to continue to learn a bunch. We'll learn a lot about all these teams. You got a really, really good stretch going forward. Then on the offensive end, just like, hey, to continue to hit those deep shots like when they come. I think they had a little bit of an issue early on, just like Devontae Smith gets held up a bunch. Like you make a throw that's unfortunately just not in the spot when you need it to. But the offense it's much more sustainable than like 4 weeks ago. I was like, oh, they are really, really playing with fire. I keep saying like the gotta have it pass game is not like the greatest designs that I've ever seen, but you have AJ Brown, you have Devontae Smith. They really are gonna force you to play one high, and I do think that the Cowboys had a little bit of success just like muddying things up with the front. I wonder if the Commanders are going to do a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, the gotta have it pass situation is probably like the main concern for the Eagles right now, where Jalen Hurts ranks 13th in EPA per play in like likely pass situations. So that's when like there's a pretty high chance of dropping back. 13th in EPA per play is like, probably not, where you want to be when your general pass offense ranks pretty highly, where he ranks sixth in EPA per play in all situations. So that's my like main concern right now with the Eagles offense, is just like when the defense knows that they're dropping back, like what kind of answers can Kellen Moore dip into to account for like kind of like the drop off in production that they've had in those situations.
All right, Tage, let's move on here to the San Francisco 49ers, who, of course, get Christian McCaffrey back this week. We're not going to end up talking too much about the Cardinals. Obviously, I mean, we talked offline just how much their offense is. It's so fun to watch. We love James Conner continuing to break tackles. We're really able to take it to the Jets there. But for the 49ers, and when I look at Christian McCaffrey, I was interested to see, well, what is his usage and how is he moving? He played a ton of snaps. Based on Sumer's tracking data, he was above the 90th percentile in our burst metric, which it's kind of how quick you're getting to a really, really high speed. He was in the 94th percentile last year, but for him not to be around like 75, I think that is really, really encouraging, where you're not fully back to normal. You can see him moving. You can see him moving well, which was good. And it's not going to be the same offense as last year. Unfortunately, like it is shifted in a different direction. It has to, just based on who the personnel is at this point. But what I really like seeing in their win against the Buccaneers, where there was a bunch of issues, we'll talk about those as well. But McCaffrey out of the backfield, McCaffrey running routes from the slot, really forcing linebackers they're pulled down because of that. And like tying those linebackers down is like the most beautiful aspect of offense, like across any offense, I feel like that you watch across the league. So adding that back in is going to be, I think, really, really positive, where it does feel like they're a little bit more of a volatile unit overall. You're still relying a little bit on Brock Purdy to create outside of structure. I do like it. Feels like they're expanding Ricky Pearsall's role a little bit. Juwan Jennings, our guy, just constantly kind of filling up that stat sheet. So I don't know if you had kind of any thoughts before we talk a little bit about. Actually, let's talk about the kicker stage, because we've also talked about, like, oh man, these kickers are just automatic. They're making everything. It's wild how this is happening. Like, was it just bad kicker variance? Is it something we need to worry about? Like, what is the state of the NFL kicker, Tej?
Yeah, I mean the kickers have gone through like a very interesting transformation in the past couple years, where especially like 10 years ago, when a kicker made a 55-yard field goal, it would like get on the national news sometimes. Like it was a big deal when that happened. Now, like when kickers are making these 55, 60-yard field goals, they're just like expected, where especially like last year in the beginning of this season. But you saw some like bad kicking performances yesterday, like Jake Moody in the 49ers game, Young Wei Koo for the Falcons, like just kickers that sometimes like run cold for parts of the game, just because it's such a mental position. Like in terms of just like the mental aspect of controlling your emotions, like kicker is like probably number one in all of football. And I think that's really just what happened yesterday, where like both of those guys are good kickers generally. They just like missed a field goal early and probably just got in their head, which anyone that's played any sort of like individual sport like probably has experienced something like that at some point in their life.
I mean, the Jake Bates, both of his makes are by such a
Yes.
small margin. Like, it is so wild to be able to see that. And, back to the 49ers game, like, you missed 3 field goals. The game doesn't have to be as close as it was. I don't know. Like, am I holding on to the 49ers too much? I keep on defaulting to them. So we're recording this Monday during the day, and then Sam Burkhouse and I will be live Monday night after the Rams and Dolphins play. And Tish, if Sam comes on and says that the Rams are the best team in the NFC West, I don't know. Like, what am I supposed to say to that? Because it feels like the 49ers have fundamental issues at different times. At the same time, like, you still have Fred Warner just making these sick plays where there's a concept that every team runs, where you got, trips to one side, running back away from the other side. Everyone's kind of, all the 3 receivers are running to the right. The running back's leaking out to the left. Warner just like sifts through it. Like, literally, I've not seen, other players be able to do that. And he did have some plays where we don't have to talk too much about, where he didn't take the best angles, but feels like it's going to be led by the offense finding their efficiency as well as their explosiveness. Can you continue to have McCaffrey be healthy? Continue to lean on that run game, where of course they didn't have a great run game against the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers have a really good rush defense. But Taish, am I holding on to the 49ers too tight?
Well, I think like when it comes to the 49ers, like especially on offense, like they have this core of players where they should be able to kind of overcome some of the adversity that they face better than like if the Rams were to lose Puka or Cup again, where like you have Jennings, Pearsall, Debo and Kittle, who can all be like these legit pass catching options and all have like different days where one of them goes off based on the matchup. Now that you have Christian McCaffrey starting to work back in the lineup, like you'll see a little bit of added juice in the run game, a little bit of just like formation and personnel diversity. And so like this is the time I feel like to buy into the 49ers offense because of that, where you have this game yesterday where they had 172 yards after catch, which was the most all season. In terms of like EPA, they also generated the most. So like once adjusting for context, they added about 8.6 in EPA. You have the Pearsall long touchdown early in the game. The most impressive play of the game was Brock Purdy finding time and going to Kittle in the back of the end zone. Like they will just be able to sustain a pretty good offense because of the pass catching options, now that like all the ins and outs of like this player getting injured and this player coming back have settled in, I feel like, for them.
Tej, I mean, you say this is a good time to buy. As you know, I'm throwing worse money after bad money after like fine money. I just keep on buying in. As you know, I'm not placing any bets. That's going to be a fun one to keep on monitoring. I do like your point there. I didn't think about that too much, that you assume that they can, sustain a little bit more just based one, they faced a ton of injuries already, but like you pull out some of those pieces for Los Angeles and it's really fallen apart. And then, I mean, again, we didn't talk about Arizona too much. Like they're leading right now. I do think their offense is sustainable. Kyler is playing awesome there. I have doubts about their defense. I do think they're going to be a total legitimate contender for the division as they head into their bye week.